roller coasters are what drives us to amusement parks year in and year out. Amusement parks must always stay on their toes so that they can lay claim to the latest and greatest roller coasters in the industry. Unfortunately, sometimes parks can't always get their ideas for roller coasters past the planning stages. For a plethora of different reasons, roller coasters can get canceled. Today, we'll be discussing some of the best and most interesting roller coasters that never happened. Today, I selected 7 roller coasters that, if they were built, could have changed the industry forever. I wanted to mention that 5 out of the 7 roller coasters were selected by my followers on my Instagram page at WNY Coasters, so make sure to follow my Instagram account using the link in the description so you can participate in opportunities like this one in the future. Since there are so many coasters that have been canceled, I won't be able to cover all of them in this video. That's why I'm leaving the door open for a potential part 2 in the future. Make sure to leave a comment down below if you'd like to see this. Also, make sure to tell me what coaster you found the most interesting on this list. Anyways, before we get into the video, I'd like to ask you to like this video as it is free and is the easiest way to help out the channel. Also, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel as well for more amusement park based content coming in the near future. Now, getting back on topic, the plan for this video is for me to talk about each canceled coaster a bit, explain the reasons, if any, for it being canceled, and I'll try my best to give an accurate comparison to what is the closest experience to what I think the coaster would have felt like if it did get built. Now, with all that being said, let's check out some wild canceled coasters. Our first canceled coaster comes from Energylandia in Poland. About 5 or 6 years ago, Energylandia had a contest between 2 hypercoaster concepts that would be coming for the 2018 season. The 2 concepts were an Intamin hypercoaster and a Vekoma hypercoaster, and the Intamin Hyper won. That Intamin Hyper became what the coaster known as Hyperion is today. So I included the Vekoma concept on this list, even though it wasn't technically canceled because it never happened, but I found it very intriguing because we haven't seen anything like this from Vekoma since this concept was released. But nevertheless, this coaster looked very intriguing from the few animations we saw. This coaster was said to be an upscale version of Let Coaster at Legendia in Poland. It included many airtime moments, inversions, and a big spaghetti bowl section. At this time, Vekoma was just starting to introduce their new concepts like the Bermuda Blitz coaster, so this obviously led many to be skeptical of Vekoma given their past of poor quality clone coasters. Obviously, this coaster ended up being cancelled due to Hyperion beating it out. We haven't seen a Vekoma Hyper yet, so there's a possibility this concept might be used at a different park, which would make for a really interesting story in my opinion. The closest coaster to this would have to be Let Coaster, as I mentioned earlier. Many thought this coaster could have been better than Hyperion, and they wanted this coaster to be built instead. However, I wouldn't be surprised if a coaster very similar to this concept is built at a park someday. So this story isn't really completed yet, which just makes this coaster concept that much more interesting. The next coaster on this list comes from a park that is now defunct. In the year 2000, Geauga Lake, or then Six Flags Ohio, was rapidly expanding. They added 20 new rides, including 4 new roller coasters for the 2000 season. The park was looking to go even bigger for the following season. The park had plans to add a 200-foot hypercoaster to the SeaWorld side of the park on the land they just purchased. Unfortunately, those plans were shot down due to complications with the city of Aurora. The park had a 35-foot height limit on the SeaWorld side of the park, so they were unable to install the hypercoaster. We don't have many details on what this coaster would have looked like, but let's do a little speculation for fun. The 3 prime candidates to construct this coaster would have been Intamin, B&M, or Giovanola. The Intamin Mega Coaster was just starting to heat up after Six Flags installed it at Six Flags New England, and maybe this would have been the sequel to it. The reign of the B&M Hyper was just starting as well in 1999 when Raging Bull was the first B&M Hyper to debut in the Six Flags chain. Also, Goliath was just built at Six Flags Magic Mountain in 2000 by Giovanola. In 2001, Six Flags installed Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure and Titan at Six Flags over Texas. This makes me wonder if one of those coasters could have been intended for Geauga Lake. This coaster may have changed the entire outlook of Geauga Lake's history had it been built, or it could have been just another big waste of money for the park. Make sure to tell me down below if you think this potential coaster would have changed the course of Geauga Lake's history in the comments section. For our next concept, we are taking a trip out to the shore at Morey's Piers. Morey's Piers is looking to build a 120-foot tall GCI wooden roller coaster. This concept was probably one of the coolest ideas for a boardwalk coaster ever. This coaster's entrance was planned to be built on Surfside Pier, but the plan was to build a new pier to house the majority of the ride. The coaster was supposed to go under the boardwalk and feature 2 tunnels. The 2 names for the coaster that were in the running were the Wild Woody or the Boardwalk Flyer. In 2011, the park was ready to begin construction for the new coaster for a planned 2013 opening. But the park took a huge hit when financial investments fell through and they delayed the ride until 2016. This never ended up happening. In 2019, Morey's Piers built a family coaster called Runaway Tram, which was likely the replacement for this attraction. It's really a shame that this coaster was never able to be built, because it looked like it would have been a very solid ride. This coaster was definitely a stretch to begin with because of all the logistical challenges that a park on the boardwalk poses. But nonetheless, this was a really creative idea. I don't think this concept will ever be brought back due to the way the boardwalk is set up now, with Runaway Tram and Doo-Wopper taking up the space that part of the ride would likely sit on, from what we can tell from the concept art. This coaster's closest family would have probably been a Twister-style coaster like Gold Striker at California's Great America or some of the other Twister-style GCIs. Overall, this coaster was a one-of-a-kind idea, and this had potentially one of the best boardwalk coasters ever. In 1995, Paramount's Canada's Wonderland was looking to build a new B&M Invert to be their star attraction. Paramount was installing multiple B&M Inverts across the chain and was looking to put a Top Gun themed B&M inverted coaster at Canada's Wonderland. However, there was an issue with this. Down in Ohio, Cedar Point and B&M made an exclusivity agreement to keep the B&M Invert away from other parks in the region. Canada's Wonderland was still fixed on getting an inverted coaster, so they opted to install a Vekoma suspended looping coaster. Unfortunately, this coaster model has become infamous due to the rough ride experience that causes a lot of headbanging during the ride experience. This coaster would be named Top Gun, but is now known as Flight Deck. This coaster was the much more economic friendly option, but that came with the price of sacrificing a good ride experience. The coaster was still very marketable due to the concept of hanging below the track still being very new to the industry. These days, the coaster doesn't really get any lines and fails to draw in the crowds that B&M Inverts have been able to, with their re-rideability being much better than the SLCs. Canada's Wonderland was the unfortunate recipient of a bad coaster due to the exclusivity contract that Cedar Point had signed with B&M. This coaster would have likely been similar to the other Top Gun coaster in the Paramount chain. This B&M Invert would have likely been a hit for Canada's Wonderland had it not gotten cancelled by Cedar Point. However, the park did go on to get 3 B&Ms in the future with Leviathan, Behemoth, and Yukon Striker. As funny as that may seem, this exclusivity contract may have actually hurt Cedar Fair in the long run, because they ended up purchasing the Paramount chain and they had to inherit this terrible coaster instead of the B&M Invert. Superman Escape from Krypton coaster at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas is one of the most beloved floorless coasters for good reason. However, this B&M coaster almost never was built. Instead, Six Flags was considering building a massive Togo coaster. This may have been a bit perplexing to a lot of people considering that Six Flags wasn't known to work with Togo and most of the Togos in the US stunk. However, overseas, Togo had made some pretty solid coasters and they were a respected company. We did get a layout for this coaster, so we know exactly what it would have looked like. And many thought it could have been just as bad as some of the other Togos in the States. I definitely like the choice the park ultimately made to go with Superman, the ride we have today, over this Togo concept. I don't actually know if this coaster would have been a stand-up or sit-down, but regardless, I don't think this coaster would have been able to top Superman. In terms of a reason why this coaster never happened, I don't really know. It probably just was passed on, but I don't really know when this concept was proposed, so there may have been some other reasons for this coaster being cancelled. In terms of a coaster that would be similar to this, there's not too much in the United States that is similar to it, so maybe that Starjet coaster in Japan? I don't know a whole lot about Togo coaster, so make sure to give your best comparison to this coaster down in the comments below. But overall, this coaster not getting built was probably for the best, but definitely was an interesting thought. Kentucky Kingdom has added rides consistently since they returned to the coaster scene. This was supposed to continue in 2021 until the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Kentucky Kingdom was caught filing permits for a new coaster that was supposedly going to be an RMC Raptor for 2021. This coaster was supposed to fit next to Storm Chaser in the park Superloop, and it would have likely had a layout similar to the other Raptor clones we've seen. However, this project had the wheels fall off of it when the pandemic hit. Since Kentucky Kingdom likes to mess around with us enthusiasts on social media, this became a talking point for their social media, and they called this new project T4 and said it was going to be a dueling SLC to their current SLC. But nothing ever came of it. This project gave us some hope for 2021 until we heard it was cancelled. As far as we know, this project is dead. Since then, the park has been purchased by Herschend Family Entertainment, so I don't know if that project will ever be brought back. Obviously, this coaster would have been similar to some of the other Raptor clones we've seen, so that's the comparison I'm going to make. Overall, it was a shame that this coaster became another victim to the COVID-19 pandemic, but hopefully Herschend treats this park right in the future and potentially brings this project back. Back in 2013, Darien Lake sent out a guest survey regarding a possible new roller coaster to come to the park. The description of the new coaster said it featured the first wing-over drop on a wooden coaster, a 0G camelback hop reversal, and a suspended corkscrew, all within a 3,190 foot long course. This coaster was intended to open in 2014 according to the planning stages. This was all happening right when RMC started to take the stage in the amusement park industry. Outlaw Run had just been built at Silver Dollar City, which the slide featured a picture of. This coaster was actually rumored to be a redo of Predator utilizing RMC's topper track instead of the iBox track. There were also rumors that this could have been a ground up coaster, or the coaster could have been built by Gravity Group. This coaster would have likely been a star at the park and probably would have made waves in the amusement park industry. However, this coaster didn't end up happening for a multitude of reasons. For one, rumor has it that the town board actually denied the construction of this coaster. The concept of wooden coasters going upside down was relatively new at the time and may have seemed like something that would have posed a safety issue, especially to people who didn't have great knowledge of the industry. Secondly, Herschend Family Entertainment, who were the park's operators at the time, had their lease end to operate the park, and the park's operations were handed over to Premier Parks LLC in 2014. This concept may have been just that, a concept, for all we know. There's a possibility that didn't have any steam behind it at all, and Herschend was just looking at Lake Monster as something that could happen possibly down the line. Or it may have been well into the planning stages, but regardless, the ride never happened and the concept looks to be an afterthought at this point. However, from the limited knowledge that we have on what this concept would have looked like, it likely would have been similar to Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. Or maybe we could have seen something similar to some of the Gravity groups we have today, like Mindblower or Hades 360. But whatever it was going to be, this still leaves us looking at Predator and wondering what could have been to this day, just hoping that RMC will come to us someday. Overall, there have been so many canceled coaster projects that we know about. In fact, there are so many projects that we probably have had no idea about their existence, but nevertheless, each and every coaster concept has its own story, and its own reason for not being built. I only covered a select few of those stories today, and I know many stories of canceled coasters that I didn't cover in this video. So I have a proposal for you. If you tell me in the comments that you want to see a part 2, and this video gets 200 likes, I'll guarantee a part 2. I know that number sounds crazy, but if everyone does their part, we can get there. But I hope you enjoyed learning about some canceled coasters with me today. It's definitely interesting to look at what could have been, and it's fascinating to see what parks have considered doing in the past. But I'd like to thank you all for making it to this point in the video. I really appreciate it, guys. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this coming soon. Now, with all that being said, I'd like to thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.